Well, hello everyone. My name is Tom Johnson, and I'm the director of the EOGOGIX Web Live programs. Having been involved in computer-based training in one form or another for more than 25 years now, it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this Web Live session. For those of you who may be new to EOGOGIX, I'll just refer you to the About EOGOGIX page on our website. Suffice to say that the EOGOGIX team, led by KK Aurora, has been involved with a large number of landmark telecom projects worldwide during the last 20 years. Now, our presenter today is Frank Ortman, who's a principal member of the EOGOGIX telecommunications faculty. You can view his detailed bio on the website, but I'd like to say just a few words by way of introduction. Frank teaches the EOGOGIX courses on 4G, WiMAX, Wi-Fi, SIP, and VoIP. He also provides consultation on RFP design and vendor selection to those involved in implementing broadband networks as part of the BTOP program that's included in the Economic Stimulus Act. Frank's teaching and consulting career builds on his 20-plus years experience in telecommunications and electronic warfare. A firm believer in learning by doing, he even operated a small WiMAX network of his own for a while. I thought you'd find that interesting. Frank has published several research reports and 4 books covering topics such as WiMAX, Wi-Fi, VoIP, and the emerging all-IP architecture. And now, without further comment, Frank Ortman.
Good afternoon and welcome to the WiMAX presentation. Let's get fired up here. So one quick bit of housekeeping to get out of the way is intellectual property rights, and yes, we have them. Let's move on and talk about WiMAX and what I call the 3 A's. I like to describe any telecommunications network as being boiled down to just 3 factors: access, applications, and affordability. Access, that is the technology for accessing the network, making that call, getting that website, seeing that cable TV show. Applications, what do you really do with that? And affordability, does it make business sense? Go into the access portion of WiMAX. So what is WiMAX? And it's a IEEE standard. 802.16d is the fixed version, which was ratified by the IEEE in 2004. And the year after, 802.16e, the mobile variant, was ratified. And per the WiMAX forum, the industry group, it has a performance parameters of pushing 72 megabits, line of sight, point-to-point, out to 30 miles, and at a multi-point configuration, reaching ranges of up to 6 miles or 10 kilometers with a shared bandwidth of 40 megabits per radio. Again, that is from the industry group, WiMAX Forum. Your mileage may vary. I want to also emphasize that WiMAX is not Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi was meant to be a last 100 yards technology, and WiMAX is intended to be a last mile technology. And initially, Wi-Fi had some issues with security and quality of service, but many of those have been corrected over the years. And WiMAX has learned a lot from that, integrating a lot of levels of encryption and many measures for quality of service. Well, what's the overall significance of WiMAX, or why would you spend an hour listening to me talk about WiMAX? What you should know is it's one of 2 standards for 4G last mile. LTE, or long-term evolution, is the competitor. In the round 1 of Stimulus Act applications, out of 1,130 applications for last mile infrastructure projects, 307 were WiMAX applications, which almost outnumbers fiber applications almost 2 to 1. For our international market, we should note that there's over 200 deployments worldwide. And here stateside, you should be familiar with Clearwire and its multi-billion-dollar partners, Sprint and Comcast. Well, what is 4G? Well, most of us contend that it's a marketing term, not a standard with hard and fast numbers. So let's just talk in broad brush strokes as to what is it. Well, it's certainly more bandwidth than 3G. It's mostly mobile. Smartphone users have been craving this level of service. It is all IP. There will be no circuit switching in 4G. And finally, WiMAX does meet this description. So currently in the telecom news, we're seeing a lot of consternation on the part of smartphone users who contend that their smartphones aren't quite as smart as they would like them to be. There are problems with dropped calls. Downloads may not be as fast as one thought they should be, which leads us to the question, are the 4G devices here, but perhaps the networks are not? And then what has to happen in order for those smartphones to perform as, I'll call it, quote-unquote, promised? And is WiMAX one of those solutions? Well, we'll talk about the architecture. Now, AT&T announced recently that they've invested $18 billion in upgrades to their network. And let's go back in history. The last great build-out of telecommunications infrastructure in the United States was in the late 1990s during the telecom boom. And the last, which coincided with the last great fleet of circuit switches being deployed also in the late 90s. Since that time, in the last 10 years, we've seen Nortel go into bankruptcy and Lucent merging with Alcatel to form Alcalu. In other words, times have not been good for traditional circuit switch vendors. The radio access network, that is the wireless piece from the base station to your phone, is dependent on the public switch telephone network of central offices scattered throughout your city. PCS spectrum, that's 1.9, and that is the most popular wireless spectrum here in the United States, was auctioned in 1993, and there's been very little spectrum auction since that time. So how are we going to get our 2010 devices to work on a 1990s network? What I'll do here is provide a highly simplified overview of the cellular network as we know it, moving from the right-hand side of the diagram to the right. On the right-hand side, we see the user, and this network was largely, the business plan for a cellular network depends on highly compressed voice calls. Perhaps a base station can process hundreds of such calls per hour, connecting to the cell station, which is connected to the PSTN. And approximately 80% of cell towers are connected via copper wire. Yes, that other 20% does have fiber coming to it, which provides a lot of promise. But as it is today, approximately 80% of cell towers are connected to the PSTN via copper wire. And most of those might have a maximum of 4 T1s. A T1 is, of course, about 1.54 megabits per second. If we have that maximum of 4 T1s, we're up to 6 megabits up and down. Now, if you and I get out our smartphones and want to do some streaming video at 300, 400, 500 kilobits per second, and hog that bandwidth for an hour, we've certainly killed the business plan crafted over a decade ago based on highly compressed 6 to 8 kilobit per second voice calls. Moving farther to the left, let's look at the core of the network, which consists of a series of central offices supporting the public switch telephone network. And in those central offices are those circuit switches that handle voice switching, and of course very large routers to handle the data routing